Next, on our new business, we have a drought supply presentation by District Manager Barber. George is going to give us some new stuff that he has compiled together on this.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I got a presentation. No action is expected, but we will have a closed session item regarding one of the options, or both of the options, after the regular meeting, but it shouldn't take long. So, the purpose of this presentation is to start the discussion regarding drought supply. We're not discussing costs today. We're not comparing the cost of one alternative versus the other. This is just the concepts and how they would work. It's a very complex issue, but this is a decision. This is why you were elected to be on the board, to make these complex decisions. They're not easy, and it's not going to be easy.
That's why we get the big buck.
That's why you get the big bucks. In my opinion, what you need to ask yourselves as board members, and I think you should ask yourselves this on every agenda item, and it doesn't mean you come up with the same conclusion, but you should always ask yourself, what's in the best interest of the health and future of the PID? Since I've been here, I've talked long-term planning, future, being ready for our grandkids in PID, as they like to say. So an overview of this presentation, I'm going to cover a need for drought supply. I'm going to cover alternatives that we've identified. I'm going to cover climate change. I'll get more specific with the Miocene Canal and a Lake Oroville option. And then we'll talk about the next steps. Need for drought supply. The need was established, it started in 2004. The discussions began a little bit before I got here in September of 2004. The district was successful in getting a grant to complete a water supply reliability study. Previous to that study, the general consensus among people in Paradise, most of our staff included, was if we built dams for 18,300 acre feet, which is what our rights are, we're golden. We're going to have all the water we need, problem solved. But what that study showed was that's not the case. We are exposed to droughts. Even if we build a brand new Magalia Dam that holds 8,000 acre feet of water, whatever our balance is, 6,000 I guess, we're still exposed to droughts. I highlighted this in a 2008 water supply report to the board, and the board gave direction to continue evaluating and looking for drought supply opportunities or import water, as it was told. The current storage and supply does not provide enough firm yield for our demands. Firm yield is that weird question that's going to come back up again. But the firm yield is the theoretical amount of water that can annually be used from the supply system without running out. It's a calculation based on 100 years of historical rainfall data. It means if it's around 7,200 acre feet our firm yield. So if we're using 60, whatever it is, I think it's in here later, right now, we're good to go. But a board would have to have the nerve to go, Paradise Reservoir is down and there's only 200 acre feet of storage yet, but we're under our firm yield, so we're okay. So it takes those things into account. It doesn't address, what your minimum elevations need to be or what your comfort level is as a board. Conservation, like I said, has reduced our demand below the firm yield. But certainly our future demands, it will exceed that. As I said earlier, we're still exposed to drought, even if our reservoirs were constructed to full capacity. Here's our situation right now. 15,960 acre feet. That is the average annual runoff into our system. 2012, I apologize, those didn't come through, but 2012 is our most recent year of usage. We used 6,466 acre-feet of water. Our most recent high year, 2004, was 8,349 acre-feet. This is what conservation's got us. But what you really need to pay attention to, this number right here. This is our average annual over 100 years. This is what our average multi-dry year supply is. So that's a 3-year drought. We would, on average, get 5,000 acre-feet into the system each year. That means your reservoir's going down, down, down. This is what we calculated, based on rainfall data, what the inflow would have been in our single dry water year. Some of you were here in '76, and it was scary. That's not even this year. This happened in 1929, I believe. So we were better off in '76.
When was the dam raised?
76,
76, 77.
Yeah.
This is a chart out of our urban water management plan. So this shows you what happens in a normal year between what we have in storage and what comes into the system. In 2015, that's what we expect our demands are. So we look like we're in pretty good shape. Just 17,000 extra acre feet. And if you're looking at normal water years, we're looking pretty good, even out into what we project our demand would be in 2035. But you need to pay attention. These are the ones I referenced on the last chart. This is our average water year. This is our single dry year, 23-24. And this is what happened in 3 multi-year drought, 3 years, 5,349.
That's cumulative over the 3 years, or each year?
That's the average each year. So 15,000 over 3 years. So this is kind of what happens in a single drought. Under our current demands, we begin the year with 11,000 acre feet of storage. We use up 5,500 for our needs, is what we're anticipating. If we meet our 20 by 2020 goals or keep meeting it, this is what's left at the end of the year. How comfortable are you as a board going to be going into winter with 5,000 acre feet of storage in our reservoir? And as our demands increase over time, that number keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Haven't our demands been flat?
They have been flat, yes. Are you going? I can't project that they're going to be flat out to 2035.
No, I know that, but I mean, there's been no growth in the town to speak of for almost 10 years, according to your. I was just looking through those reports, and the demand has been flat, about the same amount or less.
How much growth was there from 2000 to 2005?
Well, it's in my urban water management plan.
It wasn't.
I think we had a little bit of growth there.
This is showing you that whole history. This is our 2011 demand, because we just got our 12 calculated, so it hasn't been crunched through our chart yet. This is lower. We used less water in 2011 than 2012. What you're seeing here is our storage levels calculated by the model using our 2011 demand. So what that means under our current policy, every time you see this red line dip, we're asking our customers to cut back. So if our demand stays at what 2011 is till 2035, we still have an exposure. There's the potential for 30% cutbacks if we experience the same rainfall patterns that we have in the past. This is what we calculate as our 2035 demand. We don't do calculations based on population growth. That is done by the Butte County Associations of Government. We are a water district. As I said, we need to plan for the future of this district. So those population increases that are projected in the Urban Water Management Plan are the high end of what Butte County Association of Governments says our growth could be. So you're clear. I always try and bank on the side of caution that we're planning for our water supply. The board can make a different decision than that, most certainly. But that's the way I'm going to present it. So you can see with that 2035 demand, and it wasn't huge, it was only 8,000 acre feet, which we used in 2004. So if we start having leaky pipes springing up again, we got 60 miles to repair, and we hit that 8,000 again, this is what historically our customers would have experienced. Here's a 15% cutback, here's a 30% cutback. Oh, no cutbacks. Now we're down to, that's a that single year, dry year, that's a 50% cutback. So basically, we tell our customers, all that investment you've made in your landscaping in your yard, you might as well let it die because you're not allowed to use water outside. That's what it'll come down to. So with an 8,000 plus acre demand, these are the kinds of things we're going to experience, but no action taken.
Are you talking about no action on fixing the pipes either? The 60 miles of pipe?
No, that 8,000 acre feet, that assumes a 7% unaccounted for water. Staying constant throughout. So we identified, the board identified in the past, with some little help from staff, options. One was the Miocene Canal. One was Lake Oroville. There's multiple ways of Lake Oroville being a drought or import supply. The Tuscan Aquifer was discussed. That would be drilling wells in Chico. In Chico they have, we just had a kind of a meeting with Cal Water, Chico. We exchange ideas once in a while, maybe once or twice a year. They have, I believe, 54 wells in Chico. And when their demand starts growing, they drill another one because they have this big aquifer underneath them. So one of the options we could do is go down the valley, drill a well that we would use for drought supply, and build a pipeline up Neal Road. Politically, that didn't fly very well. I won't get into why that's kind of put on the back burner. Another option is wells within the district. We have our D-tank well. We have our E-tank well. It's a pretty good example. The D-tank well, we did good. We got a well that will sustain 225 gallons a minute. But in Paradise, we're in a fractured rock aquifer. That means when you drill the well down, you're looking for a crack in the rocks that's holding water that you can pump out. So when you go to Chico, you've got these layers of soil over time, and you have big pockets of water that are basically underground reservoirs. That's not the case in Paradise. So when we go out and drill a well, it's a bit of a gamble. It is an option. We could start going around town, finding spots to drill a well, take a shot, and see what we can do. Probably spending 100, 150 grand each one. The D-tank or the E-tank well we drilled, and we got 75 gallons a minute. That one didn't work out so well. You can make the argument that with climate change, I won't say it that way. You as a board need to understand that climate change is out there. It's something that we'll have to address in every CEQA document. I'm not here to preach whether you believe it or not, whether it's man-made or just cyclical. But if you follow what has been studied in our area for climate change, it says that Northern California will experience an increase in individual storm intensity. That's important for Paradise. We basically fill up with from 3 to 5 multi-day storm events. They come in, they're intense, and our reservoir fills up quickly. So that's a good positive. Mountain areas will likely see an increase in precipitation, though the snow-rain mix is likely to change towards more rain, less snow. Not a big deal for us. We get no snow melt as a source of supply for us. our catchment area is too low in elevation. California as well will experience hotter summers and possibly wetter winters. Possibly. Hotter summers means bigger demands, so when you get to the end of the year, your reservoirs are going to be lower. Those demand figures we have in our urban water management plan, we don't have a way of guessing climate change impact. We saw it. When we had a 2011, it was a very mild summer, and our usage was way less than 2012, where this was quite a bit hotter. And the potential for wildfires will increase. That impacts our watershed. That's why I bring it up. So, I guess the best thing I can say is all we can use is the data we have. The data is historical. And just like your stock investment advisor will tell you, future results are not historical past is not indicative of future results. But we have to use the tools we have and do what we can. So the board, this is your decision. You could take the stance that climate change is happening, we're seeing it, and we're not going to have to worry about a drought. Our reservoirs are going to fill up way better than they did in the past. You as a board can make that decision. You also need to know the flip side. You could make a decision to spend millions of dollars on a drought supply solution, and it could sit there and sit there and sit there, and we never trigger it on because of this. But you're buying insurance, and in my opinion, you're making the prudent decision as directors to do the best you can to plan for the future and provide the supply to your customers, because ultimately that's what we're here for. The Miocene Canal is one option that we're exploring. Can you flip a couple of those lights down on this one, Kevin? There you go. This is our treatment plant. The Gilly Reservoir's up there. There's our ponds if you're interested, or processed water ponds. This is the head dam. So the Miocene Canal starts here. It's PG&E's water. They own the water. Their right is a pre-1914 right. It has consumptive properties, so it is marketable. And it goes into a canal. And this canal runs along this side of the river. And it goes for miles and miles and miles and ultimately generates power. That's not our concern. All we care about is this little stretch right here. When we walked it a few months ago, the most likely alternative for a structure where we would intake water would be right in this area. There'd be two alternative routes. One route could go through Forest Service land, across the highway, and come up here. Another alternative is there's private land that we could secure an easement from, bring a pipe up here. It's a couple 1,000-foot lift. It's not going to be cheap water, but it is but it's there. Covered it. Go to the next one. In my opinion, here's the pros and cons of the Miocene Canal. It's a quality water supply. The quality is very similar to what we treat and experience right now. A pretty pristine watershed above it. It's a good supply. We get to utilize our existing treatment plant. So all we have to construct is an intake structure, pumps, and a pipeline. The reliability is very high. We looked at records back through the 60s. What we're asking for was there through the 76 drought. It's got a very high reliability. The treatment of that water is completely in PID's control. Our guys are doing it. They're treating that water that's being delivered to our customers, and it meets our needs. That quantity of water will be what we need to get through droughts. The cons, like I mentioned before, infrastructure is going to be idle for long periods of time. I've been here 8 years. We would have never flipped the switch. Probably wouldn't have flipped the switch going back into the early 90s. There's complex issues to resolve with multiple entities. Who's involved in this is PID, Cal Water Oroville, PG&E, and potentially Butte County. So it's not a simple maze to get through. The other, let me see if I did this right. Let me go, okay. Now I messed myself up. Just a minute, sorry. The other option that we're evaluating right now is a water exchange agreement with Delaware Water Company. Delaware Water Company's Lime Saddle District is shown up here on the wall. Previously they had a split system where they had a small treatment plant and they served a few connections down here. And then they had this section up here that was delivered by PID water that they provided us and paid for us to treat and deliver. Well, they've since completed the phase 1 of their intertie project. So there's a brand new, there's improvements to the intake, there's improvements to the pipeline up to the treatment plant, there's improvements at the treatment plant, and they constructed a 16-inch main up Pence Road and to a tank and booster pump system right here. So they got a good start on it. If PID were to join in and use Lake Oroville as our ground supply and came to a terms with Delaware Water Company, there would have to be further increases in treatment capacity, further improvements in the intake structure, additional pumps, things like that. This pipeline in here is now smaller diameter pipelines that would need to be upgraded to the 16-inch to continue it through. And then on PID side, the improvements include a 12-inch main. From that point, it would go along Harrison Road to Stearns Road, so we get that water to one of the backbone major pipelines. And then throughout our system, depending on as we go along and determine what our needs are, there may be a need to put pump stations in between zones. So this water right here would come into our D zone. And we may need to move water from the D to the C, and we may need to move water from the C to the B zone. Once we move water to the B zone, it actually can go backwards up our pipe and be pumped to the pines completely their water. So those are the kind of physical changes we're talking about. But there is some pros and cons that I've identified. Some may come out on both potentials more as we go along. The pros, there's less complex issues to resolve. We basically have physical infrastructure to improve, which is pretty easy to figure out how to do, calculate what the cost might be. You know, pumps and pipelines, that's what we do. It provides benefit to all Ridge residents. So this is envisioning an agreement between Delaware Water Company and PID so that the benefits would go to Lime Saddle, they would go to PID, they'd go to Paradise Pines District. Why is that important to us? I mean, your job is to take care of PID. But the fact that it provides benefits to all Ridge residents opens us up for being much more competitive for potential grant opportunities. Transfer agreements are big in DWR's world right now, and so that would really strengthen any potential grant opportunity we had with them. The cons are water treatment would be provided by an outside entity. That treatment plant I showed you on the last page would be operated by Delaware Water Company staff. There's absolutely no disrespect to their capabilities. It's just something that you as a board need to know that we're not totally in control. What I've talked about with them in the early stages is they have a great new SCADA system, so we would be able to monitor that water quality at all times. We have the ability to shut valve off, and if we didn't like what we were seeing coming up the hill, so we've got some, safety measures in there. But the reality is it's not done by our people. Our concern's been expressed in the past. Around 2000, when Ray Auerbach was here, this notion of a water swap was the word used then, took on a lot of public controversy. There's binders that thick that Ray had to deal with. At the time, the main issue was MTBE, potential MTBE in the water. MTBE is a product that came from fuels. It's now been banned from fuels, so that's not as big as an issue. But this intake structure is down by the Limestone Marina. So other issues that were brought up back then are, houseboats potentially dumping their waste tanks above the intake, things like that. These guys have been, Delaware Water Company's been, dealing with that without any problems for quite a few years. But you need to be aware of it. It was a big deal in Paradise, if you don't remember. And it only partially meets PID's needs. The pipes are just not big enough to deliver the same quantity at this point of our investigation as the Miocene Canal. What that means is we have to buy insurance water potentially to make it work. So we'd be buying a certain amount of water when our reservoirs hit a trigger level. I'll show that to you a little bit in the next slide. So very likely we're buying water, pumping it up quite a bit with the potential that our reservoirs are going to fill and spill. So it has its downsides that way as well. But it has benefits. Like I said, it still has quite an improvement to our current situation. There's also some changes going on with Butte County's Table A water. That's where we would go buy the water. They were dealing with some lawsuits with DWR. So the likely price of that water that we had talked about in the past will be less expensive, but it's not public knowledge yet. This is something Neil put together for me, and it shows you, this is our current situation. This is 2012 demands, 6,446 acre feet, and us importing 1,000 gallons a minute out of that system. So right now, based on our historical data, we would see a 15% reduction in one of 12 years, 20% in one in 17, 30% in one in 100, and with this demand, we're not looking at 50% cutbacks anymore. If we import this water under scenario 1, that means we wait until our reservoir is 10,400 acre feet on April 1st, and then we're going to take that 1,000 gallons a minute until it gets back to that level, and that improves our situation quite a bit right now. You see that 1 in 33 years for 15%, 1 in 100, that's pretty remote. The next one is probably buying a lower deductible insurance, I guess you could say. Every time it's basically, if we're not spilling on April 1st, we're going to import water. And that is the type of reliability it would improve to. The last one's a little more taking a look at energy to see how this versus this, that's basically this one. No trigger, sorry. No trigger, so every summer we would import water during off-peak power. And that's the kind of benefit we would get with that scenario. And this is all compared to a Miocene drought supply of equivalent of 5 CFS at the 10,400 acre foot trigger. So you can see that we are looking at almost no reductions required of our customers for our current demands. If you look at what we're projecting, 8,000 acre feet, that's our 2035 demands. We've exceeded that in the past. And you can see where these numbers are occurring more often. The benefits of the Del Oro project aren't as great, but the Miocene drought supply does continue to provide us, meet our needs, even at our 2035 demands. So the next steps, like I said, this is about getting the conversation going, not only with you, with the public. You have a tough decision ahead of you because water in many parts of this state is a commodity. There's interchanges and transfers from one district to the other happening daily, all the time. We haven't had to do that. If you address water as a commodity, you cut a deal with Del Oro and you improve your drought supply regardless of what that quality is. And I'm not talking treatment capabilities, I'm talking Lake Oroville versus what we get to experience now. So what I think the next steps are is provide information on our website. These are the alternatives we're looking at right now. This presentation can go on our website. Develop a method for receiving public input. So on that same tab, we can have a place where people can send an email to drought supply at paradisirrigation.com. That would get forwarded to me and all the board members. So if somebody made a comment, we'd all get to see it. And then, of course, there's lots of further negotiation and development of these alternatives. The next step with Del Oro is another sit down with their engineer and Neil and I and make sure we have the same understanding of how they expect to operate this if it were in place, how we would expect to operate it, how often, those kind of things, for us to really be able to present with you what the parameters of a project like this would look like, both supply-wise and financially. That's all I have. Questions?
Since the Del Oro man's here, I was curious what happened when we had the dry year. I remember visiting the lake on the other side, and the white pipes that are in the bottom of Lake Oroville were exposed, and it looked like at Lime Saddle there was probably no more than 10, 15 feet of water left.
I believe at that particular time we extended the line down and brought in another pump system and extended it down lower. I believe that's what happened. I was not on that particular project, so I can't say for sure, but I think that's what happened. I remember a lot of talk about going down lower, what kind of type of water or turnaround it might have. That's basically all I remember, but I think we just went down lower. And I think
according to their plans on the most recent, there was another additional extension with their recent project.
Yeah, I could see why George was concerned about quality. It was pretty brown, what was left in the lake. So.
I can tell you that I've been drinking it. I live in Lime Saddle District, as you know, since 1994. So I've been drinking the Lake Oroville water since some point in the summer. Didn't notice it. I couldn't tell you that they changed on the next day. It's been fine. In the fall, I noticed for a while it was probably something with storms and the lake turning over from the weather. Maybe noticed a little bit of taste difference. Probably nothing that a Brita filter wouldn't take out, but just anecdotally, that's what I've experienced so far. But haven't been tasting it when the lake level's way low either, so that may have an impact.
During the drought, they had signs, no water skiing due to excess dust.
Any other
Any other questions at this point?
Mr. President, may I make a comment? To George's last point before the slide, this is just at the conceptual feasibility. It's even pre-feasibility stage. Conceptual, I guess. The district, in order to consider any option, would need to conduct a CEQA analysis. And that would flesh out alternatives, including the alternative of doing nothing. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Sorry, I was supposed to have that disclaimer.
Yeah, so the disclaimer's been made.
And the reason,
Thank you, Dustin, for bringing it up.
Probably a little quick. The reason that there's no cost being discussed is both of these are negotiations for a real piece of property. Water is property. And so the board has the ability to make those negotiations in closed session so that they have an opportunity to make the best deal they can without outside influences. So that's why the dollars aren't being presented. And I'll probably work with the board and legal counsel to figure out when it's appropriate to bring those into the mix. May even be after CEQA, very potentially, because costs of projects should not really have an impact on CEQA. Yeah, Doug?
I was brought up to date, or at least asked about this, and it was from somebody from the old Lime Saddle. And I don't know the year, perhaps he can relate to it. Lime Saddle actually solicited the PID to take over their district, as I understand it. What the person told me.
For $1.
For $1. And we would have got it for $1, but we would have had to take over a $250,000 or $300,000 debt.
Thank you.
But there was a reserve of $450,000 plus or minus in the bank waiting to be tapped. And for whatever reason, the PID decided not to do that. And I've kind of wondered about that.
Hindsight is always clearer.
That was a bad decision. Hindsight is 2020.
When was that year? The person that told me about it was on their board, but
Wasn't that long ago, because it was Lime Saddle Community Services District until probably 98, because I was a customer at that point.
yeah. Now, the Butte County still has, 25,000 acre feet of the lake there of their description?
Yes.
And you say it hasn't been public yet, but that'll be, what do they get per acre foot for that? What goes to the state DR?
Well, right now it's usually in the $40 range, but I wouldn't use that number because these settlements will change that.
Thank you, George, for that report.